G'day everyone. In this tutorial I'm going to go through the second question in the set of tutorial questions for this week. The first one that I covered was in the previous video, list the price and type of rooms at the Grosvenor Hotel, in which I use a nested query in order to solve that. Now nested queries are fantastic, and the actual query that we're doing now, which is the second one, could actually, more than likely, I'm pretty sure, actually be solved by another nested query as well. But sometimes there are cases, and this happens quite a bit, in which nested queries won't suffice in being able to give you the solution to a certain query specification. And in that situation, sometimes you have to combine tables together within a database. And it can also be extended then if you have multiple databases, combining tables across databases. But for the purpose for what we're doing, we're only working with the one database, so you don't have to worry about any of that. And that's the approach that excuse me, that I'm going to take in this question here. So the question specifies that we have to list all guests currently staying at the Grosvenor Hotel. So in this situation here, we actually end up using 3 tables. So we're going to actually have to combine 3 tables. Now, when we obviously when we're combining tables, we have to identify which tables within the database that we're actually going to be combining in order to get this information, and 2, when we're actually combining the tables, we need to make sure we combine them correctly. So when I say combine them, we're actually doing what's known mathematically as a Cartesian product of the tables. Now, if we do a Cartesian product of 2 tables, it will give us a huge list of data whereby if you have table A and table B, it will take each element of A and match it up with each element of B. So if A has 5 elements, it will take the first element in A and then match it up with all of those in B. Then it'll take the second element, match it up with all those in B, and so forth and so forth. I'm more than happy to do a separate tutorial explaining the actual process of what's happening when we combine these tables, and they're also called joins as well, but I'll leave that as a separate video if required. So we have to have a look to see which ones that we're actually going to be using and which ones we think we're going to be using. So it says list all the guests currently staying at the Grosvenor Hotel. So immediately my mind goes to the booking, because the booking table obviously refers to those guests that are currently staying within the hotel. So if we have a look, I just need to log into SQLite. So I'm using XP here, so it's different if you're using it's SQLite 3 hotel. I'm just going to put the headers on, mode column. You don't have to do this, it's just for me. So immediately what I want to do is have a look at, say, everything that's contained within the booking table. Now I know I normally tell everyone to do everything in Notepad++, but I just want to have a really simple look at something. So basically, when it says list all the guests currently staying, obviously in terms of their current date, or say if we're going to let for the purposes of this tutorials, when they say that they're currently staying, we'll say that the current date, as in today's date, which is the 20th of March. Now, as you can see in this table here, this is obviously a database that was created a while ago, and it's not for our years. There is this one element 2010, but there's none for 2011, so there's none obviously that are contained within here. Now, for illustration purposes, I'm actually just going to use, I'm going to say that, well, we'll make the date still the 20th of March, but instead of 2011, we'll make it 2009, so we can actually pull some data from this. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to start with this table, and I'm going to pull out all the people that are on the 20th of March that are currently staying within this. So that means that they have already checked in and they haven't checked out. So if we have a look at how we're going to filter this table, obviously it's a simple command. The current date has to be greater than this, so current than the date that they checked in, or equal to, and has to be less than the date too, so that they haven't checked out. So we're going to just write that as a simple query. So I'll select all here from booking, where date to so date from, to start off with, date from is greater than, less than or equal to today's date, which is, I just want to double check the format. How do they do it again? It goes year dash month dash date, so 2009, remember we're going to make it, 03 and the 20th, and date 2 is greater than or equal to, so once again, and it'll be the same date, 2009, 03, 20th. So if we have a quick look at the database, let's just have a look which ones that'll refer to. So the 20th, we've got 25th, 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 24th, so it should be these ones in here, I would imagine. So obviously these are all the 2008, it's going to ignore that. So in terms of the 2009, it's going to be this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. So I'm assuming that we should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 results, because the current date lies within that interval. So let's just double check. So I'll save this file and I'm going to run this. So remember, I'm just going to use the .read. If you've seen the other video, I'm storing it in a different directory, but I advise you, you'll see just quickly, I'll just do it quickly here, you'll see I've got a week 4 directory where I'm keeping all of my SQL files. You don't have to do that. Remember, if you're not sure about that sort of stuff, and what I recommend if you're not sure about SQLite, just save them all in here, and that'll save you from having to do this week 4 stuff. You would just type the name of the file. So the file is question1 part2.sql. Okay, and if we have a look here, let's just make sure that these match up. So let's have a look at the dates. Yep, so these are definitely, obviously, in terms of today's date, in 2009, these are obviously contained with it. So these are the people that are currently staying within, and we know that they have these guest numbers, and we know that they have these hotel numbers. So the question states, I mean, this raw information doesn't give us any solutions whatsoever. It says to list all the guests currently staying at the Grosvenor Hotel. So if we have a look first, we've got these guest numbers here. So these are the people that are currently staying. So let's just find the actual guests which correspond to these numbers. Now obviously, in terms of what table I'm going to match it up with, I'm definitely going to use this guest table here. Now what's most important is what column or columns I'm going to match it up on. Now, you don't always have to match up on columns that are named the same, but for the purposes of what we're doing, and for everything that's going to be in the subject, and for all good SQL coding practices, there should be columns that have the same name, and they should be primary keys matching up with foreign keys, or primary with primary. But we can go into more detail with that as the semester progresses. So we're going to match up on the guest number. So whenever we're doing this, so when we're selecting, we've only been selecting from one table. We're now going to select from 2, guest, and the way, and before I actually proceed, in these single queries, the reason, normally when you're writing an SQL query, you have to tell it which table these columns are coming from. So because we've always, and so far all we've dealt with is single tables, we haven't had to tell it that it's coming from the booking table, because it automatically assumes we're only dealing with one table. So this day from has to be from that, and day 2. So when you're selecting it from two tables, you then have to tell the write it in SQL for the compiler which table you're getting it from. So one way we can do that is we can actually type booking dot date, and we can do that for each column that relates to the booking table, and then for the guest. But to make it easier, you can actually create aliases. So you know in the previous sheet you could change the title of a column. Well, it's the same sort of thing. You can actually change the alias, or you can give a table an alias, or like another pointer, like another variable name that you can call it. So it's just common practice that usually go with the first letter, just to make it easier. So this will change to b.datefrom, and this will be b.datefrom, and it's not selecting from all because it doesn't know what table, so it'll be b.all. So I'm going to remember we're going to be selecting it from the guest table as well. I'm going to give it obviously the alias of G to make it easier, and remember that we're matching up on the guest number column. So to do that, the way, and like we could write actually the condition down the bottom, but I always like to list, whenever we're doing a from statement and we're selecting it from multiples, the first line I like to have, and this is just me personally, and it's sort of good practice to do it this way, is to actually have it listed below here, like what we're matching up in terms of the condition. So the only thing that changes is this will become an and this will be where the where is now. So remember we're matching it up on guest number, so guest number is equal to G dot guest number. So what I want to do is I'm going to select everything from B, and I'm going to select everything from G, and the reason why I'm going to do that is I'm going to show you that in this SQL query, when we've actually combined these two tables, it's actually performed this operation correctly. So it's only going to find elements in B, or it's only going to keep the records whereby the guest number in B is equal to the guest number in G, and I'll show you that with the output, and then we'll get rid of it because there's no need to keep it. So when we do this, this is just coming from B at the moment. When we combine it with G, these are the only guest numbers that I'm going to want to see, and there shouldn't be any more added to it whatsoever in terms of the number of rows. So let's run the query. Now unfortunately here, because